Hey everyone, it's me, Rami Marks, your tangled yogi out here in Northern California. Welcome to the Thousand Forests Zentangle-inspired class. I just got done teaching this class for the San Rafael Public Library, and I thought I would share it with you as well. So let's talk about the things that we're going to need today. I'm going to be working with a Micron PN pen, the Identi Pen from Sakura. This is a thick nib pen. If you need to grab a Sharpie in lieu of it, you can. I will be working with the Posca pen. I have the PC1M in my hand, but you can also use your Jelly Roll pen from Sakura as well. I will also be working with the Jelly Roll Gold from Sakura. This will be for building the border around the darkened frame. You know me, I am a Prismacolor girl, so grab your Prismacolor pencils. We're going to have a lot of fun with these. And hey, if you don't have Prismacolor pencils, don't worry about it. Just grab whatever color pencils you have and play along with us. I will also be working with a graphite pencil and a blending stump. If you don't have a blending stump, go ahead and grab a Q-tip from the bathroom and that will work in a pinch. I will be working on tiles that are 4.5 inches by 4.5 inches, but if you don't have the tiles, you can always use your favorite sketchbook or use really nice cardstock that's super smooth. With that said, let's get started with 1,000 forests. So hopefully you've had an opportunity to gather all of your materials. And let's take a moment to get centered before we create today. Go ahead and take a comfortable seated position, allowing your shoulders to melt away from your ears. You can let your hands rest in your lap, letting your feet touch down onto the floor. And if you're okay with it, allowing your eyes to close for a moment, letting your attention come to your breath as you breathe in through the nose gently and gently out through the mouth. Breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. And last time right here, in through the nose and out through the mouth. And as we are taking this moment to get centered here, I'm going to share a quote, and this is from Ralph Waldo Emerson. And he says, "The creation of 1,000 forests is in one acorn." And just taking a moment to acknowledge that even small things can become very important things. And taking in one more deep breath right here. Let it go with a sigh. And in your own timing now, wiggling in your fingertips and wiggling in your toes, and gently blinking the eyes open. And let's get ready to create. Okay, so let's begin by just picking up a number 2 pencil or a regular pencil here. And we're going to start by just creating our frame around our piece here. And all I'm going to do is start by putting in dots in my corners and then playing connect the dots. And you can see that I'm going fairly lightly with my pencil here and just building that frame for the piece. And you can see that my frame is a little bit narrow, and that's just going to give us extra space in which to work in. Now, once I've had an opportunity to build my frame here, we're going to do a little bit of a different kind of string. And so take a minute and finish up your frame, and then when we come back, we'll start to build that string. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to do just a little bit different than what we've done before in the past where we've had a bunch of squares in here. I'm going to start by using my frame as part of the measurement here, and I'm going to come up about 2.5 inches and make a little dot here. And then I'm going to go out from the bottom about 2.5 inches and make a dot here. I'll come up and try to meet that little dot right here and bring it in so that now when I go ahead and connect my dots, I've got a box that is 2.5 inches by 2.5 inches. So we're starting off with a really nice string here where it gives us almost this L shape that we've got. Now, once I have that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start to build a frame inside of my little box that I have here. And so once again, putting in my little dots and building my frame so that when I go ahead and create in this little square, it's going to have a really nice frame around it. So it's going to look a little something like that. So go ahead and do yours. I'm going to finish up mine, and then when we come back, we're going to add 2 more boxes to the piece. So once I've got that frame in there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the midpoint on the box just a little bit above it, and I'm going to go ahead and create a little dot there. And what that's going to do is it's going to give me a place to create a square. And then I'm going to come over here and find the midpoint over here, and I'm going to create another square. Once I've got my squares, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to aura them as well. So you're going to see me come in to the inside of the box, and all I'm doing is auraing. You can see that I'm just framing this up. And what I liked about this particular string was that, it has a little bit of an offsetness to it, but it does have a really nice balance to it. So once again, I'm always saying to you that you could put a million different kinds of tangles into this particular string. And so it's always nice to have a string to play with that you can come back over and over again and you'll get a completely different kind of composition. Okay? So take a minute to finish up yours in pencil, and then when we come back, we're going to start to ink it in. Okay, so you can see that I've got my Micron PN in my hand, or the Prismas pen in my hand here, and I'm just going to start by inking in my first square here. So all I'm doing is actually just inking the lines that I started with. And you can see that I'm going nice and slow. Remember, you want to take your time. The more you take your time, the finer the line will be. And then I'm coming into the center here and bringing in a frame around the center. I'll let that start to float upwards, where I'm going to work with the upper piece here and let these connect. And then I'll go down into this little corner over here and build these out as well. Remember to breathe, relax in your shoulders, soften in your jaw, and just enjoy the process. Remember, we're here to have fun. So you can see there's our string come to life here, and then all I'm going to do is just build this out right along the edge here, taking my time and letting it connect. So there is our string. All right, so have some fun with this, and then when we get back, we are going to start with our next tangle. Okay, so grab a scratch piece of paper. We're going to learn our first tangle today, and this is called Margie, and this is by Barbara Duell Johnson. And I love this tangle because you get a lot of bang for your buck with this one. All right, so here we go. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start out with my pencil here. You can see I just have a square, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to round off my corners here in order to make this tangle really pop inside of the square. So you can see all I've done is just rounded off my corners, and that's going to be a guide for me. Now I'm going to pick back up my pen here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by putting in a plus sign. And then once I have my plus sign, I'm going to go to the edge of where I've got these little rounded off arcs, and I'm going to put a dot in each of them and then connect them. And you can see all I'm doing is going ahead and connecting. Once I've got that, I'm going to just round off. And what this is going to look like is I'm going to start from the top, and I'm going to build little almost teardrop shapes that are coming down from the top. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, and I might be able to get a fourth one in there. So you can see that they're just kind of rounding off. I'm going to go to the next one and do the same. So all I'm doing is just little teardrop shapes coming down and then going to the next one. And they're all just connecting to the center. So see how that looks like a little teardrop shape? And just rounding off. It almost looks like half of a heart. Perhaps that's a better way to describe it, half of a heart. And then turning, half of a heart. And then last one right here. So that you get this really beautiful, almost like a leaf-like snowflake. That's the best way that I can describe it. And then what I'm going to do is now emanating from the side, I'm going to throw a flux in there. Flux is that upside down teardrop shape, and then I'll go to the next one. See how I've got this little area right in here? I'm just going to pop up and give it a flux. Popping up. And so all that's doing is just creating a little bit of interest in this area right in here. And then once I have that, all I'm going to do is I'm going to go up through that little teardrop, and I'm going to bring in a little bit of fescue, which is a line that is slightly curved with a little tear on the end of it. So all we're doing is we're just coming up through that fescue, or rather through that flux, and creating a little fescue. So right in here, just an arc, and a tear. Super fun, super easy, and this tangle is so much fun to shade. I have to say, I might be slightly obsessed with it. I just thought it would be such a great fall tangle piece, so that when you come back around, look at how pretty that is. Now I am going to go into the center, and I'm going to just bring in a little circle, and I'm going to pool my ink in there just to give it a little bit of focus. All right, so that is our tangle of Margie, and let's go ahead and bring it into our piece. So we're going to bring Margie into this nice big square that we have here, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up my pencil, and I'm just going to round off my corners just like I did before. Now eventually you won't even see these, but it just is part of the string for me. Once I've got that, in each of these little corners here, you can see that I'm making my little dots for when I go ahead and start to build. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to start by coming right into the middle of the piece here, and I'm going to build my plus sign. And then I'm going to go ahead and turn again, come right in here in the middle, and build that plus sign. Once I've got it the way that I want it here, I'm going to start to bring those diagonals into it here. So all I'm doing is going across and across. So I liked when we talked about it as half of a heart. So let's go ahead and call it half a heart. So all I'm going to do is come in, round off, and build half of a heart. Coming in, you can see I'm stepping down a little bit and rounding off. Another half heart, here's another, and here's the last one, and I'm letting it connect. Turning the tile, coming in half a heart, stepping down half a heart, stepping down, and last one right here. Continuing to turn, taking your time. What I love about this particular tangle is that it really has a lot of zen to it, a lot of repetition. Remember to breathe. And here comes the last one. Now for all you rock painters out there, can you imagine this on a rock? Wouldn't that be so pretty? Leave that for somebody to find a little random act of Zentangle there. So I'm going to come in now and start to build flux, that nice upside down teardrop shape. And then I'm going to go right up the center of it and create fescue. Turning the tile, coming right in here where the V is, create that nice flux shape. Go right up, create fescue, and moving on. Lots of repetition so you can get into the groove. Turning the tile. Super fun. Continuing to turn. Got a little wiggle and wobble in that line this morning. Had a little bit too much of my matcha. And there you have it. Isn't that so fun? I hope that you like it. So go ahead, do yours. I'm going to finish up mine. I'm going to go ahead and just pop a little of that circle right in there. And then we will have a lot of fun shading that in a little bit. So go ahead and finish up yours, and I'll see you soon. So we're going to start to work in our squares here, and we're going to start to build an acorn. And acorns are so fun and easy to draw. I just really enjoy them. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick up my pencil here, and I have this really lovely corner that I'm going to be working with. All I'm going to do is I'm going to draw two curved lines that are going down towards either sides of my corner here. So this is going to be the point of my acorn. Now I'm going to just create a soft curve that's going across the top, and let's go ahead and zoom in on that for you. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do another one that's going to go right across the top. Once I have that, I'm going to build just a little bit of a stem that's going to pop off and come back down towards the center. So that is going to be my acorn. So I'm going to come in here now with my pen and just start to bring that acorn to life. I'm going to create a nice soft arc here and a nice soft arc here, and then I'm going to connect the two with some soft lines. Now I'm going to go ahead and ink in that top piece. And most acorns have a really nice textural feel to them in this little cap that they wear. And so what I'm going to do for a little bit of detail is I'm going to do some diagonal lines going across, and then in the opposite direction I'm going to send some diagonal lines going across the top for some thatching. So I'm going to go ahead and just leave it at that and do the other side just the same way. You go ahead and do yours. So one of the things that I start to think about in terms of looking in nature is you start to see little berries on the bushes when you're hiking and whatnot, and they're really bright, beautiful colors or big, deep purple colors. And so we're going to be using a Tangle by Debbie New, and this is called Moonberry. And I love this Tangle because it kind of mimics the idea of tipple with a little bit of pizzazz. And so all we're going to do is we're going to create an orb, and let's go ahead and zoom in on that. And then I'm going to create this little star-like shape that's going to go all the way around. So you can see it's like a little star-like shape, and it's already starting to look like a berry that you had plucked from a bush. And so all I'm going to do is I'm going to aura that berry and give it a little bit of interest. Now what's so cool about Moonberry is you can just let a bunch of them jump off the side, and you can change, your direction of where you put your little star. That one's a little goofy, but it'll work. And then you could put one over here and put your little star somewhere else. And so you get the idea of what Moonberry can look like. And so what we're going to do is we're going to use this to frame the outside of our acorns. So let's go ahead and bring in our piece here. And I'm just going to start by putting in a nice little orb right here in the corner. So I'm just going to come in and start to build my orb. And then I'm going to build my little star. Once I've got my little star, I'm going to go ahead and aura. And there's my first Moonberry. Now I'm going to come in over here and just do one that's just going to pop off the side of it. And I'll put in another star. And I'll aura that. Super fun, super easy. I'll give that a little bit of a line so it looks like it's kind of hanging out on the sides here. Let's go over to the other side and do another orb here. And then we'll create that star. Let's see, I'll do this one going downward because I want it to look like it's moving around. And then I'll do one that's jumping off the side, changing the position of that star so that it's in a different spot. And then maybe one up here. And then one of the things that I like to do is just throw in a little bit of flux. So I'm just going to go ahead and find a good spot for a little leaf here, and maybe another one right over here. And I'll create some lines. And then maybe over here we'll have a little, just to give it that fallish kind of feel. Maybe another one over here. And then to fill in the space around, because I've got these really wonderful little interstices, I'll throw in some tipple. So you can see that I'm just throwing in some orbs here and there. Maybe one in here and one over there. And you know, every time I do this, it always ends up a little bit different, and that's just fine with me. Remember, we're looking for handmade, we're not looking for perfection here. And so that's how I'm going to handle those little corners, which is really, really fun, just kind of cramming in those little berries and having it be really sweet. This is such a great way to like do a little you know, how people will put a little identifier on a gift. You could put one of these on a gift and then write something on the inside of it, like a little card or whatever. It's really, really fun. So that's how we're going to do the corners here. I'm going to do the exact same thing on the opposite side. So if you want to rewind and watch me do it again, you can, or you could just go by your heart and go for it. So I just love the way that those corners kind of speak to each other and give a little bit of cohesiveness to our tangle here. So we're going to learn another tangle, and this is called Leaflet, and I love this tangle. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to create a nice box here. And we're going to go ahead and create a couple of lines that go through the box. So it's going to go like this. 1, 2, and we'll go with 3. Let's see. Well, actually, let's just do 2. So here we go. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by creating a wavy line that's just going to go back and forth and back. On the other side, we're going to go ahead and we're going to go back and forth and back. Same thing over here. All we're doing is creating a line that's going to go back and forth and back. And you can see that it creates these really nice little leaf shapes. And mine are wonky. It doesn't have to be perfect here. And so all I'm going to do now is I'm going to create these really pretty variegations or stems inside of my leaves here. And I'll start with this one because it's the most pronounced. And you can see I'm getting them to line up as best as I can. I'll come down here and do the same. And it's such a pretty tangle to shade as well. We're going to have a really good time with this one. Now you can see that I've got this leaf shape right in here, so all I'm going to do is just mimic it. And it's okay because, you know, leaves are wonky. They're not always perfect. Let that one go over. And then I'll come over here and do one over here. Letting that just kind of float off the side. These kind of remind me of aspen leaves a little bit for my high elevation people. And then I'll come over here and do these over here, just creating my lines, going down the stem here, and then even over in here, just looking for the place where I'm just going to bring in the stems. Same thing down in here, so that now you've got this really cool textural feeling inside of the piece. So let's go ahead and add it into ours. So I'm going to go ahead and start to divide my space in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come in right here and add a little line that's going through. I'm going to do another line right in here, and then I'm going to add a line right in here. So I'm doing 3 lines, and you can see there's my lines. And then I'm going to pick up my pen and I'm just going to start. So you can see that this would have been a box in here, but we've got this other tangle that's overlapping it. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and make my lines nice and straight as I can, coming in and working with this last one right here. So they're about the same apart here, and all I'm going to do is start to create that wavy line. So I'm going to come in and just create a nice wavy line that's just going to go right off. And then I'm going to come down over here, create a nice wavy line that's going to go in and it's going to go out. Same thing right in here. All I'm doing is just coming in and trying to line them up as best I can. And then once again over here and letting it go right in there. Once I have that, I'm going to start to build my lines. So just coming in and giving it those nice lines coming down. Going over to the other side. You can see that I'm really just taking my time with this. Such a beautiful tangle. And then I'll continue to work my way down. For me, I find that when I really take my time with my lines, I'm much happier with the result. So just go slow. I'm going to come over here and start to work with this one. And over here. Remember, go light on your pen here. I know sometimes when we get determined, we tend to press a little bit harder. And now I'm just going to work my way down the sides here. So all I'm doing is just connecting. Same thing over here. Just taking my time. And then coming in over here. And letting it connect. And this particular tangle, it has like a real illustrative feel to it, you know? Instead of, having a real realistic feel, it has a little bit more character, I think. And so I really, really like it. I'm going to come in over here and bring in a couple over here. And then I'll go ahead and bring in a couple down in here. And that is our leaflet, which I think is just going to be really, really fun once we get it shaded. All right, so you go ahead and finish yours. I'm going to finish up mine. And then when we come back, it's time for color, baby. Okay, so many of you know that we've had this conversation in class about using pencils in the Prismacolor set that we don't use often, and I have taken you up on it and we are going for it. So here we go. The first color pencil I'm going to be using is called Yellow Ochre, and this is PC 942. And then I will also be using the Cadmium Orange, which is PC 118. And then finally, I'm going to be using Scarlet Lake, which is PC 923. Now, if you don't have these color pencils, don't worry about it. Just grab whatever color pencils you have and play along with us. What I'm looking for is kind of a mustard yellow, a really warm orange, and then a really nice warm red as well. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to start with the lightest color. We're going to start with that light ochre, and we're going to be working right inside of Margie here. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by just shading ever so lightly over the top of this. Now you can see by the way that I'm holding the pencil that I'm really far back on the pencil. I'm not doing detail work here. I'm really just adding a nice foundation of color, and so I'm holding the pencil pretty far back, and that helps me to be able to get a lot of color down without having to press that hard. It just makes it a lot easier. Now I'm also going to pick up my orange, and I'm going to start to dust the orange about halfway through the piece here, or halfway through the leaf. And then finally, let's go ahead and zoom in on that a little bit more. I'll pick up a little bit of the red, and I'll just hover along that black line, and you can see that all of these I've been going nice and light with it. Now I'm going to give this a little bit of pressure right along the black line so we get a little pop of color. Once I have that, I'm going to take that yellow ochre again, and you can see the line of demarcation between the yellow and the orange. I'm just going to go very, very softly and do little circles to blend out that line of demarcation. And I'm also going to work my way back to start pulling around some of that pigment so that I get a really nice soft blend of color here. Now, if you're a fan of working with the Prismacolor Pencil White, this is PC 938. You can see I really have loved this one into oblivion here. I'm just going to come in on the edges, and I'm just blurring out any kind of scratchiness in that background, and it really gives this a beautiful feel. So I'm going to go all the way around to all of these and do just that. I'm not going to work on the flecks yet. The flecks will come after, so just wait on these little leaves with the fescue moving through. Have some fun with this and really just play. Isn't that so fun? I just love the way that that came out. So we are going to start to work with our petals that are on the outside of the piece here. And you know, it was interesting because when we started working with this particular tangle, people weren't sure about it, but then as soon as they started shading it, they really liked it. So here we go. I'm going to continue working with the Scarlet Lake, but I'm going to bring in another color, and this is Terracotta, PC 944. And for those of you who are using a different color set, what I'm looking for is a warm brown. So I'm just going to start by taking that really nice Scarlet Lake here and just giving this a nice soft dusting. And then once I have that nicely dusted, I'm just going to come into that upper part of the leaf and just give it a little bit of interest. I'm going to take a little bit of the yellow ochre and I'm going to blend it out just a little bit. And you can see that that gives a lot of dimension to it. You can even take some of that yellow ochre over to where the Scarlet Lake is and give that a little bit of a touch as well. So I'm going to go all the way around and do that same thing all the way through. Have fun with this. Okay, so I'm just going to come into the center here with my white pen and just put a little dot right in the center just to give that a little bit of focus. And I really love the way that Margie came out here. Now I am going to wait to do the background on this. We're going to continue working with the colors that we're working with right now. So we're going to start to work with the acorn here. And I'm just going to continue working with the terracotta, and I'm going to be working with the yellow ochre. So let's go ahead and zoom in, and I'm just going to start by coming in and softly shading half of the acorn here. You can see by the way that I'm working with this, I'm doing little circles just to create a soft mist of color here. and then I'll let it start to work its way up the side. You can see that I'm starting to build a little spot where my light source is. I'm going to come back in and press a little bit harder. Just to give this a little bit of interest here. Let it come down into the point. Give this a nice softening over here and over here. And then finally what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in with a little bit of that yellow ochre, and I'm just going to start to fill in the spot where we've got a little bit of the white. And then you're going to see me press a little bit harder where the line of demarcation is, and I'm going to start to work my way back into where the darker part of the acorn is. So I'm trying to warm it up just a little bit and give this a little bit of interest. And you can see that it really gives this a lot of warmth and a lot of detail that we wouldn't have had before. Now I'll play and work with this a little bit more here just by coming in with a little bit of that terracotta and redefining some of those darker areas around the edges just to give it a little bit of depth. And you can go in and kind of break up that line of demarcation even more just by doing little circles where that yellow ochre is meeting that really nice dark terracotta. I'm going to do the same thing on the opposite side over here. You go ahead and do yours. Remember to let your shoulders relax, let your breath be easy, and just have fun and play. Alright, so we're going to let go of our brown, the terracotta, but we're going to start to bring back Scarlet Lake here, and we're going to work with our moonberries. So I'm going to zoom in on this here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with that Scarlet Lake, and I'm going to just come in, and you'll want to have your pencil good and sharpened up for this. I'm just developing a nice soft edge with the red. Once I've got a little bit of that, I'm going to come back in right along the black line, and I'm going to press a little bit to get a glow out of that red. I'll come back in with a little bit of that yellow ochre and just give this a blend. So you know, this time of year when you go hiking, you see lots of berries on the bushes, and it just really is a nice symbol for the season. You can see that I'm just going to go back and forth here and give this a little bit of depth. But you can see that is how I'm going to handle the moonberry here. So go ahead and do yours. I'm going to do the same thing on the opposite side as well, and then when we come back we'll start to work with our leaves and the top of the acorn. So I'm going to pick up my lime peel green. This is PC1005, and this is a really nice light yellow. It's almost like a chartreuse, and we're going to be using it for our flux leaves that we have here. And I'm also going to be working with a little bit of my graphite pencil and my blending stump here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work right in here and just lightly dust in a little bit of that lime peel green in here. And then once I've got that in there, I'm going to pick up a little bit of my graphite pencil and just go to the bottom of the leaf here. I'll pick up my blending stump. And if you don't have a blending stump, you can always use a Q-tip for this. It always works out just fine. And then I'll come back in with a little bit of that lime peel green and just blur the edges of where the graphite is meeting the lime peel green here. And if you want to, you could even pick up a little bit of that yellow ochre and just put a little bit in on the top here, just to give that kind of a watercolor feel. So I'm going to go in and start to work on all those little leaves on both sides. You go ahead and do yours. I just love the way that that's starting to look. Really, really fun. I'm going to take a little bit of this graphite that we have here, and I'm just going to let it run across right where my acorn topper is and a little bit at the bottom. I'm going to take a little bit of my blending stump and I'm going to leave a little bit of lightness in the center for a little sheen in here. And if you want to get a little bit more dimension with it, you can come back in and you can press a little bit harder and get a little bit more depth on the sides of your acorn. But you can see that it's just a little bit of gray on either side, leaving a little lightness in the center and a little lightness at the top over here. So have some fun with that. I'm going to go ahead and do the other side, and then when we come back we're going to start to work with the little orbs that we have in between. So I know that these orbs are very small, but it does make a difference when you add just a little bit of love to them. And so all I'm going to do is just shade about halfway through each orb with my graphite pencil here. And once I have that, I'm just going to show you so that you can see the difference. I'll give this a little bit of a blur, trying to keep as much of the light as I can. So notice the difference over here, and then notice the difference if I don't shade them. It really makes a difference if you do just add a little bit to this. So I'm going to go over to the other side here and just bring a little bit of love in there. And then I'll come in and start to give it a blur. And even down in here, just that solitary orb, it will make a difference for that. So when I go ahead and I zoom out on this, you're going to see the difference between the two. Notice what happens when you add just a little bit versus nothing at all. Okay, so play with that, have some fun, and remember, you're just going to come in and come out real quick. All right. Alright, so we're going to start to work with Leaflet here, and we're going to continue working with a little bit of the red and the orange and the yellow. So go ahead and grab your red, your orange, and the yellow, the same colors that we've been working with in here and in here. And I'm just going to start by working with the yellow first, and I'm going to be working on the right side of each of these leaves. You're going to see me come in and just start to work with the right side of each of these leaves. And using that yellow ochre again, and I'll just work with the right side. So you can see that I'm making pretty quick business of this by laying the side of the pencil down, working pretty far back on the pencil so that I can get that foundation of color in there. Remember, we're continuing to work on the right side of the leaf here. This is how we're going to build dimension, and we're really going to make these leaves just jump right off the page. Once I've got all of my leaves done with just the right side, I'm going to start to build up a little bit of the color. I'm going to be using a little bit of that orange and a little bit of that red to really give this a pop. So you can see here I've got all of the pieces on the right hand side, and now I'm going to pick up a little bit of that orange, and I'm shading it almost like in a boomerang kind of way. So you can see it almost has like a boomerang shape to it. Once I've got that orange in there the way that I want it, let's go ahead and zoom in a little bit. I'm going to pick up that red and I'm going to give it a little bit of a shadow. I'm not pressing hard, we're just doing foundational work here, so I'm just keeping it nice and light. Once I've got that the way that I want it, I'm going to come back in and give a little bit of pressure. And you can see that that really gives it a nice glow. I'm going to come back in with a little bit of that orange and start to just blur that line of demarcation a little bit, letting it dance back into the red a little bit. And then finally, I'm going to use a little bit of yellow. And I'll let that blur the line of demarcation just by doing little circles of where the orange is meeting the yellow. And you can let that kind of dance back a little bit so that you're pulling some of that pigment around. And that's how I'm going to be handling each of these leaves. So I'm going to go into each of these places where I've got the yellow and just work that same way. Now, if you love working with the white, you can pick up your white and you can give it a little bit of softening in here so that it really gets that buttery feel in towards the center, which is really nice. So go ahead, do yours. I'm going to finish up mine, and then when we come back, we'll start to add a little bit more dimension to these. Okay, so I'm really loving the way those are looking. Let's go ahead and pick up our lime peel green again, and we're also going to be working with our graphite pencils again. I'm just going to do a demonstration in this leaf right here, and then I'll set you loose on the rest of them. Sound good? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and start to dust in lime peel green into this, and I really love the way the lime peel green works with that yellow ochre. They are almost like in the same family, but that lime peel green has just a hue of difference in it that makes it interesting. So let's go ahead and zoom in on it. And you can see that I'm working on the side of the pencil here and getting that nice foundation of color in here, going nice and light, really just letting the pigment start to saturate the page here a little bit. Now once I've got that in there the way that I want it, I'm going to come in with a little bit of my graphite here, and I'm just going to turn the tile to make it work for my hands here. So you're going to see me use a little bit of graphite. This is just a number 2 pencil, and I'm going nice and light with it to get a nice shadow. And then once I've got that, I'm going to come back in with that blending stump, but you can use your Q-tip too for this. And I'm just doing little circles to kind of blur it out. And what I love about using the graphite with the color pencil is it has a tendency to just glide right over the top of it. I'm going to go in there and just get into those little spots where I might have missed a little bit. And I'm also going to give this a little bit of a press, giving it a little bit of drama here. And then I'll come back in and start to blend with little circles, starting to get that really soft kind of misty or foggy feel inside of that leaf. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up that lime peel green and I'm going to start to blur where the line of demarcation is just by coming in right over where that graphite is touching into the green here. You can see that I'm working a little bit back into that gray. And the other thing that this does is it sets the graphite so that you don't have to worry about smearing or smudging it. And I just love the way that this looks. I was talking about this in class yesterday. When you're watching the leaves turn in autumn, a lot of the time these trees will start by turning from the top down. And so at the bottom of the tree it's nice and green, and at the top of the tree it's ablaze with red. It's very pretty. So go ahead and do your greens. I'm going to go into all of these spaces where I have white and just do that. And then when we come back, we're going to add a little bit of glassiness to this piece. So here we are, and you can see that I've had a chance to move my way through this piece, and it's really a fun one. I'm going to pick up my Posca pen, and you can see that my Posca pen is a nice fine tipped pen. You can also use a gel pen for this, but I've been leaning on my Poscas a little bit more lately. And this Posca pen is a PC1M, or it's a 0.7 mm. And I love this because you can do a lot of detail work with this. It's a great pen for that. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and start to create a little bit of glassiness in this piece, and I'm going to create this almost boomerang kind of shape in here, and then I'm going to add a couple of dots, and that's going to give this a little bit of interest. You can do it on both sides if you like. I'll come down in here and just give it a little bit of a boomerang shape in there. Give a couple of dots up top. And what I love is look at how glassy that looks now compared to the other. It's just got this little sheen to it, which is really kind of fun and playful. Just getting in there and, emphasizing the shape just a little bit more, which I really like. I'll even let some come up from underneath, and maybe even some from up top. Over in here. Getting in here, super fun. This makes a really kind of festive holiday card, for the Thanksgiving holiday, which I think is kind of fun. The other thing that I'm going to do with the Posca pen or the gel pen is I'm going to come over to where my little acorn is, and I'm just going to add a little bit of a sheen in here. And then I'll go over to the other side and do the same, just adding in a little bit of sheen. In there as well. Super fun, super easy, really nice way to play with that tangle and really give it a pop. Now I'm going to come back in a minute and we're going to start to bring in some blues into this piece, and it's really going to bring the whole piece together. So you go ahead and grab your blues, I'm going to grab mine, and we'll get started in a minute. Alright, so I have my cobalt blue, which is PC105. This is a really nice kind of tealish blue. And then I happen to have in my hand the true green, PC910. These two make such a great combination together, and so I wanted to share it with you. So what we're going to do is I'm going to do a demonstration on half of this just to keep the video length a little bit shorter. So I'm going to start actually with the darker color this time, and I'm very softly bringing in a little bit of that cobalt turquoise. Now remember, if you don't have the same colors as me, try to grab something similar and just play along. Alright, so I'm getting into this corner right here, adding a soft dusting of that cobalt turquoise, and then I'm going to go ahead and start to bring in a little bit of heaviness into that corner here. Really defining the space and keeping it really dramatic. Love that that background of that blue. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of that true green, and I'm going to start it in nice and close to the petals and in towards where my leaves are. You can see that I'm just getting in here and softening it up. Can you tell I love this green? It might be time for a pencil extender. So I'm just getting in there and adding in that green all the way around. This is a really nice alternative to the light aqua, which I lean on quite a bit. Now what I'm going to start to do is I'm going to start to work my way into that cobalt turquoise. And you can see already that it's really pulling that beautiful blue around, because the light green in this particular pencil has so much wax in it, it just really gets that pigment to move. So that's how I'm going to handle all four corners of this particular piece. Now, if you want to, you can grab a little bit of the white, make sure there's nothing on your pencil when you do that. And you can see that as I start to blend these two colors together with that white, it really gets a beautiful kind of tranquil blue feel in that corner. Look at how it glows. I just love the look of these two colors together. And I'm always saying to you all, if you like the way two colors are working out in your piece, write it down so that when you are working with another piece, if you want to come back and get that same look, you can come back and get it. So we're not only just, learning to do shading, but we're also learning to bring colors together that we like. So play, have some fun with this in this corner, and then when we come back, we're going to start to work up in where our acorns are. So let's begin to bring some of that same color feature into our acorn areas here. So I'm going to just go ahead and zoom in, and all I'm going to do is just what we did in the other section. I'm starting off with that nice cobalt and just letting it go nice and light. I'm not pressing hard. This is a very pigmented pencil here, and so I just want to give it a little bit of interest in here. You can see I'm kind of jumping back and forth behind my leaves there. And then I'm going to come back up, give this a little bit of pressure, and then once I've got that the way that I want it, I'm going to grab that true green and I'm going to start to let it come down into the piece. Now remember, I'm going to start to pull on some of that pigment and start to make it move. And then I'll let this kind of fall down behind where I have my acorn here. And then if you like, you can pick up a little bit of your white and start to really blend it out. Make it painterly, so you can see that just by using a little bit of that white, we get that really beautiful pastel blur behind it. See that I'm just gonna work around the leaves here a little bit and get some fun. Just like so. Just love the way that it just has this kind of incandescent look to it. I'm going to pick up a little bit of my green and just pop it into that corner there. Maybe a little bit up in here. And then one of the things that I did in class that I thought was really pretty was I just put a little star behind this. So all I'm going to do is put a little dot and a little bit of a star just to give that some interest. Okay, so go ahead, you do yours. I'm going to finish up mine, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about the border. So I really love the way that this one came out, and it's very pretty. And if you wanted to leave it with the white background, it would be just fine. It's a really fun piece to work with. But one of the things that I did in my original piece was that I came in and I added black around the borders and added some gold. So I'm going to talk a little bit for a minute about how I went about doing this, and then I'll let you decide what you want to do. So if you want to let this be your finishing spot, then that's your finishing spot. But if you want to hang out with me and get a little bit more dramatic, then that's also a good idea too. All right, so you can see that this has got some really beautiful sheen in it. And what I was working with is the Jelly Roll Gold. And so what I did was I started by coming in and filling in these areas with gold around my little squares, the little areas around the acorn. Now, the thing with these Jelly Roll pens is you really want to have a very light touch. The lighter you go with these pens, the less they'll fight you, but they can be a little cantankerous, but they are so pretty when they do work. So I'm just going to go through and do a little bit of that gold all the way around this particular square. So if you're hanging out with me on this one and you want to just go for it, go ahead and put gold in both of your corners for where your small squares are. I'm going to finish up mine, you finish up yours, and then we'll talk about the next step. So the next place where I'm going to add a little bit of gold is that I'm going to run it right on the black line where I have my border here, or my little frame. And I'm trying to keep my line as clean as I possibly can. So not too thick, going nice and light. And then I will turn my tile and I will run it up the side as well. Once I've had a chance to do that, I'm going to pick up my Identi Pen and I'm going to start to work in the border of my Margie here. So you can see when I lift this up and I get it to shimmer, that's how I did my gold in the border there. So now I'm going to pick up my Identi Pen, and I love these pens because the ink is really beautiful and it flows really well. And so I started just by coming in and working alongside the gold so that I'm being very mindful not to run over it. And I'm just filling in the space alongside of it. You can see this is a really nice pen to work with. I get a really good saturation of color, which is so nice. You know, Rick and Maria talk about using really nice materials. Those are the creators of Zentangle, for those of you who don't know who they are. And, you know, they talk about when you're using nice materials, you have a much nicer time of it when you're creating because your materials aren't fighting you. And so I'm going to go all the way around and create that blackened area around this piece, and then I'm going to go all the way around the outside of the piece and get a really nice thick blackened border so that when eventually we come back around, we're going to have this really nice intense piece. You go ahead and do yours. I'm going to finish up mine. Okay, so you can see that I've had an opportunity to go all the way around in here. I'm going to add just a little bit of love into these lines that I have right in here, just to redefine the space so that it really pops against the gold, which is something that I think really is helpful when you are using gold to really define it with that black line that's all around it. So here I am just kind of giving this a little bit of intensity, and I'm going to go over to the other side and do the same as well. So here we are. Such a fun piece. I really love seeing it in both the light and in this dramatic way, and I hope that you do too. I've gone ahead and added my chop to it. Your chop is just your initial, and that's just your way of signifying that you've completed the piece. And this is really the time where I take a moment to offer gratitude for the opportunity to create and to do something for myself, and something that's very healthy and good. And so I hope that you do the same thing. One of the things that I was talking about with my students the other day is that Margie is a really great tangle for putting on stones. So this is one that I'll be putting out in my neighborhood, and it's always fun for people to find these really fun stones with Zentangle on them. It's just a wonderful way of sharing what you're doing and bringing a little joy into somebody else's day. So if you enjoyed the class, please give the video a thumbs up or leave it a nice review. Even better, hit the subscribe button, and even best, go ahead and share the video with a friend. It's always fun to see new people come to Zentangle and try it with color. It just brings me a lot of joy, and I hope that it will bring them joy as well. And I'd love to see your creations. If you want to head on over to Facebook and join us on the Tangled Yogi Art community page on Facebook. We would love to see your creations. We have a great group of students that love to share, and I'd love to see your work there. All right, well, that's it for me. I'm Rami Marks, your Tangled Yogi. Thanks so much for joining us today, and I look forward to tangling with you again soon. Bye for now.